Dune. 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 Dune.
Dune.
Dune.
Dune.
Dune.
Dune.
Dune.
Dune. Dune.
Dune. Welcome to Hardcover Hooligans. Guess what we're reading today?
We're reading Dune, and the
It's
movie's not
Dune.
even coming out anymore.
Oh my god. These fucking actors and writers and their damn fucking strike are
I know.
pushing out are causing
Yeah.
CEOs to be greedy and pushing out my sci-fi movie.
Come on, think about me, the consumer.
The consumer's king.
The consumer. Whatever happened to the customer's king, huh? The customer's always right.
Customer's king. Release Dune 2 on time. But yes, as of this podcast coming out, we have scheduled this to coincide with the original release date of the Dune movie. But in continuous Hardcover Hooligans tradition of we try to do something and then it fucking ruins our lives. Here
we are again.
Here we are again, and the Dune movie is moved to next spring. But we're still reading this anyway. Hey everyone, so it's Danilo from the future. The writer's strike is now over, and they won, which is great news. However, it still seems like the second Dune movie won't come out till spring of 2024, which is a big blow to the SEO of the Hardcover Hooligans podcast, but we'll survive. Anyway, as of right now, the actor's strike is still ongoing, which we just want to say that we fully support. Just thought that was important to say. Anyways, back to the show.
But at least at least it's not like we Mistborn TV show or something was coming out and we read all these books and then it's not coming out anymore, and then we just really at least this book is good.
Right. At least there is, something here. Is it possible for us to do one episode without mentioning Mistborn or Brandon Sanderson?
I don't think so, Danilo. I think it's intimately part of our terrible history.
Yeah,
It's what began. We've built this house on cursed blocks,
all, I think, 7 listeners we have for every episode now, but hey, shout out to you guys.
Hey, yeah, shout out. Thanks for listening.
All right, so we read the first half of the novel Dune by Frank Herbert, published in 1965. It's a weird novel to split in half, but
yeah,
it's basically right in the middle. Sort of, but it happened. It's like where the movie is. It's before the end of the first movie.
It's not super behind the ending of the first Timothée Chalamet movie, right? Because it's everything besides them meeting the Fremen has happened.
Yeah, this is right before they meet the Fremen in the desert. So, Mac, what has been your experience or knowledge of the Dune universe? I know you've seen the movie.
The Dune-iverse.
Copyright that.
Write that down.
Yeah, so what is your relationship with Dune?
So many moons ago, I have tried to read this book a lot and did not bounce off it for the reasons I feel like are... I didn't think it was hard to read. It was just like every time I tried to read this book, it was at a point in my life where I did not have the time to devote to reading this.
To deal with all the crazy sci-fi nonsense.
Yeah.
Read about like the C.H.O.A.M company. You're like, I don't have time for this.
I don't know what that means. Because I like that stuff. I like when books do that. So, but I just kept bouncing off it for literally like probably by now, like 10 years.
Wow.
Which is very funny. And then I had seen, I had a roommate who enjoyed, Dune a lot, who had read the book, and he was really excited about the movie, so we watched the movie together, the Timothée Chalamet one, because I had seen clips of the David Lynch one, and infamously a terrible movie.
It's fun if you like Dune.
Right, yeah.
And now more fun that it's no longer the only visual representation of this good book.
But yeah, that's so all I knew was from the basic like structure of the book, and that it's the foundation for, that Star Wars does not exist without Dune, and that and that the first movie was bad. But other than that, I didn't know really any of the specifics.
The David Lynch movie,
of the
not
story.
the first Timothy Chalamet
Right,
movie.
yes. Yes,
I think a lot of people call it the Denis Villeneuve movie because he made the movie. Timothy Chalamet did not make.
Well, no, I don't think so.
I think it.
Yeah, I think he directed
wrote,
and wrote it.
directed. Wrote, directed, starred.
But yeah, I didn't know a ton about it. I just knew that it was like an ecological science fiction novel.
Cool.
That's all. I didn't know the specifics. What about you? You have read this before, obviously.
I have. I read it in high school, and I sort of didn't understand what was going on.
Fair.
And then sort of after the fact, I like pieced it together by poking around the internet and stuff. And then I tried to read the second one, and that made even less sense to my teenage brain. And then that was really about it. And then I had a friend a couple years ago who really liked him. I think he read all of the Frank Herbert ones, and then we played the board game.
Yes. Yeah. I knew you had played the board game, and then isn't it literally in the board game that's like, don't play this if you haven't read the book?
Yeah.
Did you say that to me?
I think I told you that because if you play the board game and have not read the first book, events in the board game happen that are spoilers for what happened in the book.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so cool.
Which is very cool. And then I saw the Timothy Chalamet movie, and I loved it.
Thank you. Yeah, I have an interesting relationship with that movie because I watched it. I used to be a bartender, and my friend was waiting for me, and I didn't get off shift until 2 a.m.
Oh boy!
So I watched the first Dune movie it's like 3 hours long. I started at 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. or something ridiculous.
Jesus Christ!
So it was in I felt very much like I was on this planet with these characters. It felt real to me. Real. As far as I'm concerned, it's a documentary.
And so loud. I'm assuming it was so
incredibly loud. My brother saw it in the movie theaters, and I think he told me this, that there's moments where he had to put his hands over his ears because of that sting whenever there's those dream sequences. Yep. It's so fucking loud.
So enough about this movie, because we all know movies are trash. Let's talk about a book. Books are better and more highbrow. So what were your vibes reading the book? I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. I think it's not really what I was expecting, which was both good and bad. I feel. I know we try to be, on the Hardcover Hooligans podcast, we try to be vague now. We've learned our lesson. We try to give a vague summary in our thoughts before we dive into spoilers. So without giving it really anything away, I thought that the first half of this first section was pretty boring.
Interesting.
And then I thought the second half of this section was fucking awesome.
Okay, cool.
And I didn't know if I don't know if we gave a 2023 it's Penguin, an editor who works at a Random House. If we gave them editorial control over this book, I bet a lot of stuff hits the cutting room floor, and I don't think we really lose a lot.
Which is, I think, why they were able to squeeze it into 1 3-hour movie.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But I came away from this book largely really enjoying it and not wanting to I was upset I had to stop at the halfway mark. I really wanted to keep going.
You're so upset you threw a tantrum and left me a voicemail where you cussed me out, right?
Yes, yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. I sure did. And that's all we'll say about that.
So then let's just dive into what happens.
Well, hang on, wait. How did you feel about... Oh, I know you just said you liked it, but any thoughts or feelings different from the first time?
It was great to know what was going on, from my
Is that just because you know
self.
the lore better, or you just are okay with being confused now?
I know the lore better. I feel like it sounds weird to say, but I feel like I knew the story pretty well, even though I'd only read the book officially once.
Sure. It's not... This is going to sound fucked up. It's not a complicated story. It's
No.
It's like the themes and the messaging and the huge political implication of this book, which we will definitely talk about. That's the confusing part. But the plot is not confusing because it's Star Wars.
Yes. So let's get into the summary of Dune. So we start on not Dune, but the planet Caladan, which is a planet that is wet, not dry.
All right, are you with us, folks?
I bet it's the opposite of what you were thinking.
I know, it's called Dune.
But just wait, just hold on. Don't change the channel. All right. We meet our main character, Paul Atreides, who is the heir to the House Atreides. His father is Leto Atreides, and his mother is Jessica Atreides. I don't know if her last name's actually Atreides. No, because she's not, because they're not married.
Yeah.
And his mother is Jessica. And we begin with a scene. I was typing out my notes, and there's like a lot, it's going to be a lot of just me saying lore, because sentences and things make zero sense unless they're explained. There's a visit by Jessica's old teacher, the Reverend Mother, Helen Gaius Mohiam IV or something. And they are Bene Gesserit, which are like, they're crazy space nuns with mind powers. And the whole idea is that the Reverend Mother is here to test Paul. She's going to make him put a hand in a box. And if it's going to give him lots of pain, and if he withdraws it, he is like an animal. But if he keeps it in there, he's human, because his conscious mind is able to override his animal instincts. And spoiler alert, he does it.
Yes, this book is not 10 pages long. So this is a first big scene, you know? I feel like we could talk about this scene for a little bit here.
Yeah, it's almost a classic. Because like even if you read, even if you don't finish Dune, you've at least gotten this far.
Yeah, because it really is like, I think this whole thing is like 19 pages.
Mm-hmm.
So that I appreciate that you said that, because I don't know if when I was reading this I missed it, because they don't. Does she say like if you take it out because she says we're testing if you're human.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, because later they talk about how like there's not computers anymore, and you know, whatever, Dune lore, you know, who cares. Mm-hmm. But I was not everybody takes this funny quiz, right? It's just him because they think that he might be the oh boy, I have
the Kwisatz Haderach.
Yeah. Is
another
that why
crazy word? So that's basically like, all right, here we go. The Bene Gesserit, the space nuns, part of their deal is they just seem like innocent, crazy space nuns, but really they have infiltrated all the royal houses in the universe to sort of be able to control the breeding of the noble houses in order to produce like their chosen one, like their super guy. And they're all women, and the Kwisatz Haderach is prophesied to be a man.
And that's like the person of ultimate truth or whatever.
Yeah, like there's lots of different people in this book and universe have quote unquote chosen ones, and that's I think sort of part of it. And this is sort of the chosen one of the Bene Gesserit, which is like one political faction in this novel.
And the chosen one, and this is like already we're starting to see it, is a man in this society of women.
Yep.
The secret society of women. This is already like right away what I'm sort of talking about when I say like if Dune is trying to be like a work of pointed political science fiction, it really front loads you with a bunch of lore that in the scheme of like the message of the book is not important, or like it is there to build like a science fiction universe and is not so much about like climate change, which
or
is
like it's one. This is one of the things this book tries to be about, and I want we'll see once we've read the whole thing how this sort of fits in. But like off the bat, if someone recommended Dune to you and they're like, okay, there's a crazy desert planet with, spoiler alert, giant sandworms and this drug that makes your eyes blue, and your first scene is space nuns with needles on a wet planet. You're like, what's going on here?
Yeah, it's a really wild first scene that and like Paul sucks, like he's a whiny brat.
Yeah, he's like 15.
And it's a wild introduction. Like it's pretty brave, you know. Mm-hmm. I respect it a lot. I don't know if I was maybe editing this book, I'd keep all of this stuff, but I do really like the brazenness of it.
And I really think it's just a roundabout way of being like, hey, this kid Paul might be something special. Like, that's really the whole point of this chapter. Because he passes this test, and the Reverend Mother is, like, mad at Jessica for having a son, because they're so in tune with their body they can control, you know, the sex of their child. Because she thinks the Reverend Mother thinks that Jesus Christ. The Reverend Mother thinks that Jessica is like trying to think she's so full of herself because she can give birth to the Kwisatz Haderach, but really she just loves Duke Leto and wanted to give him a son, basic to pass down the dukedom, I guess. So that's chapter 1.
Yeah. Also, there are no official like for just reading the book, there are no chapters. There are certainly, but there's no like chapter headings. It's just like suddenly on this page there is a diary entry from a character we've never met, and a new chapter begins.
Well, so we can talk about that. The epigraphs. Each chapter begins
good
with
epigraphs, I think.
Yeah,
as
they're
opposed
not
to
crazy lore dumps.
Well, they are crazy lore dumps, but I think that they the way that they're framed work because they're all right off the bat a spoiler, pretty much. Yeah, which I do like.
And they are from ostensibly a book or books written by someone called Princess Irulan about someone called the Muad'Dib.
Mm-hmm. And if you're from, folks, if you're from Arrakis, you know that means mouse. I mean, let's just cut to the chase.
Yeah.
You know that means weird little
mouse.
Creature.
So why is this princess writing about a mouse? Well, you know what? We're going to find that
out. yeah, Dune. It's a wet planet about a mouse.
And how exactly did this mouse start a universe-wide revolution? Well, that's what this book is about.
It is what this book is about.
So a couple more notes about just the world at large. There's a galactic empire, and there's an emperor. And he's
Stop us if you've heard this before.
He's an emperor, and he's powerful. And there's also these houses who they don't work together. They all fight. But there's like a council of houses called the Landsrat. It's like a senate almost. That the idea is they keep the emperor in check, and the emperor keeps them in check. And that's part of the political situation in this universe. So, going off of that, another house, the bad guys, are called the Harkonnens. And we are introduced to our main villain, Baron Vladimir Harkonnen.
And this scene is incredibly fatphobic. It's fucking crazy.
Yes, so Baron Vladimir Harkonnen is incredibly fat.
Yeah, and I get the metaphor. We'll talk about the whole scene, but I get the metaphor, but it's like, boy, does Frank Herbert want to remind you that he is a rotund gentleman.
And that being fat is bad because...
Yes, because that means you're greedy.
Yep. It's not super subtle. No. And he has like these floating things in his sides to help keep his weight off the ground because he is so rotund.
And they got what's his name? Stellan Skarsgård?
Yeah.
To play him. And can you just imagine getting that casting call? It's like, we've chosen you to be the giant, disgusting man, evil bad guy.
I'll say it. I don't think Stellan Skarsgård is fat enough in the movie, and that was the point of contention.
I don't think he is either.
Anyway, so in this chapter, the second chapter, all the bad guys talk about their bad guy plan.
Yeah, they do.
And very pointedly. So the Baron has two guys with him. The first is a Mentat. His Mentat. Put a note in there. Put a note in there. We'll be right back. Named Piter de Vries. And a Mentat is a human who has been trained specifically to function as sort of like a human computer. Because in this universe, 10,000 years ago, there was a huge robot war that humans almost lost because they made AI, and they sort of made it illegal to make computers.
Which sounds fucking sweet.
Which I think is very...
to read about.
Yeah, very cool.
That'd be awesome. Are there any prequel books about that war?
Honestly, I don't know.
That'd be pretty sweet. Untapped Goldmine, perhaps? Maybe we write the first one?
I think it's... We'll get into this later. I think there's fun things that there are sci-fi creations, sci-fi exclamations to keep it super fantasy, because this book does feel like pretty fantasy-esque with
it does.
The houses and the war and sort of crazy magic mind powers. And this is one of the things, if there were computers figuring this out or robots, this would all be over in 2 seconds. But because it's all humans, that sort of keeps it in the realm of, human flaws and stuff. But
so the Mentats aren't magic. The Bene Gesserit are literally magic.
I say magic facetiously. Bene Gesserit are technically not magic. The idea is they're so highly trained and in tuned with their bodies and with certain psychological tricks and techniques that they have what basically feels like magic.
Okay, so
it won't actually work what they're doing in real life, but it's sort of explained as they're just so good at controlling.
So later, I'm getting way ahead of myself, but Jessica Jedi mind tricks a creepy murderer.
Yes,
that is not actually magic. It's just her being very seductive and persuasive.
Yes. So there's later in the book, there's a Bene Gesserit thing called they call it the voice, and it's basically if they use it and they get in tune with a certain frequency that your brain responds to, you can say something in a certain way in a certain tone that you will listen to what the command is, and you will do it for a short amount of time or for one command.
So it is science fiction magic, but it's not like they're casting spells.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Is that what you meant?
I was unclear.
Okay.
Yeah, because I didn't know, because I knew about the voice from the movie, and I knew it because it's the Force from Star Wars. But I didn't know if later when that happens, because they talk about being so psychologically attuned, but I didn't know if it meant in sort of a metaphysical way. That's good to know that.
I think it's supposed to be they can just control their body. So she's able to this fetus will be a son. They're so in tune that they can like control that.
Nice. Cool.
So back to the Harkonnens. Their big plan is okay. Here we go.
You got it.
House Atreides is being sent from Caladan to the desert planet Arrakis, aka Dune. The Emperor has said, "Hey, Harkonnens, you don't get to be in charge of this planet anymore and reap the profits. The Atreides have to do it, and because he's the Emperor, they have to do it." But on the backside of this, the scheme is that the Emperor doesn't like House Atreides because Duke Leto Atreides is too popular. And so he's putting him in charge of this very high-value, high-stakes planet. And the plan is that the Emperor is secretly scheming with the Harkonnens so that when the Atreides take over the planet, the Harkonnens can sabotage it, come in quick, and wipe them all out.
And why is the Emperor talking with them or planning with them? Is it so that he can also make money off of the planet?
I think it's because Duke Leto is too popular. Like, the Emperor is not like a nice guy or super popular. So like
he's Christopher Walken.
He sees Duke Leto as a threat. Yes, played in the movie by Christopher Walken, which I will never forgive them for. I want to see it so bad. And the Emperor's personal warriors are called the Sardaukar, and the idea is.
And they're from a scary... they're like horribly brainwashed prisoners.
Yeah, they're like fanatic soldiers who are all like trained on a specific planet to serve the Emperor.
And you might be hearing... If you're a nerd, you might be hearing this and be like, hey, this just sounds like Star Wars and Warhammer 40K. And you'd be right. Because it is just those two things.
The Emperor has an army of a bunch of strong people made on a separate planet just for him.
Yes. That they revere as a god. Interesting. For my god Emperor. Well, I wonder if there's a book in this series called The God Emperor of Dune. I wonder. Could that be book 3? I don't know. But this is all cool lore. It's very cool.
The reason Dune is valuable is because it is the only place in the universe for this resource called spice. And the whole point is you harvest spice from the desert and they export it to the universe because it's a drug. And they use it
as a drug? Everybody uses it. It's not like also fuel. It's like only drug.
Yes, it's a drug whose sort of value and side effects become more apparent as the book goes on. Because I think it took me forever to figure out, like, what the heck this thing is. Also, part of it is, like, once you're addicted, you can't stop because you'll die.
Because, like, the Fremen can't leave Dune or they'll die. Because it's not really up to them whether they do it or not, because it's literally in the air. So just, like, breathing it, you are high all the time off.
Yeah. And it's, like, in the melange. Food. And yes, it's called spice or melange. And we've said Fremen a couple times. Fremen are the desert people.
Yes. They live in the... And they're initially set up almost like by everybody in the book as being like dirty, terrible warring tribes of like
who live in the desert,
right?
Primitive,
Again, not subtle, but I think the book does because I've talked to people who I think this book does have problems, and I want to talk about them. But I think that people read like the narratorial voice describing the Fremen and think that's how Frank Herbert feels about the Middle East, which is not true.
No, I think that's how the characters that's how the bad guys think about it because they don't know anything about them. Part of the book is they think they're these desert people and there's like a couple tribes of them and they sort of suck and we leave them alone, but they don't really have any power. But then gradually it's revealed like there's a lot of them. They have their own culture. They're fighting against the occupying force, etc., etc.
And I think, Duke Leto is also like, well, we can use these people for our war machine, and the book sets him up as a good guy, so then you're like, oh, am I supposed to think this? Reader, listener, you are not supposed to agree with Duke Leto on everything. I hope not. He's really mean to his wife.
Duke Leto is not an idiot. He knows that this is sort of a trap, but he also just can't say no to the Emperor. But he thinks he can get out of it because, he's smart and he's like, I think there's more of these Fremen that are letting on, so we can make a treaty with them and use them to fight off the Harkonnens.
He's kind of smug.
Yeah.
Kind of arrogant.
But that sounds like a lot of setup, dear listener. That's because a lot of this is a lot of setup.
Yes, it is.
So next, we can just talk about the characters and then talk about what happens. We meet Thufir Hawat, who is the Mentat for House Atreides. He's sort of in charge of security and assassins and everything and make sure everything's safe when they get to this planet, because in this universe everyone is trying to kill each other all the time.
And we meet my favorite character in the book, Gurney Halleck.
Gurney Halleck,
the bard. Sort of the School of Swords level 5 bard, of course.
And Gurney Halleck is Paul's teacher, and he plays the guitar and fights with swords.
Yeah, he's awesome. And he's also constantly being described as ugly, which is hilarious. And he has like a weird scar on his mouth from something called an ink whip or a whip vine or something like that, right?
Remember, there's a lot. There's a lot of
describing
stuff.
it, and it keeps describing like as it almost like moves around his face when he like smiles. And I didn't know if that meant like that meant just like how like a scar can move up and down on your cheek, or if it was being literal. And I think it's vague on purpose because it's kind of cool.
But another important lore part here is revealed when Gurney Halleck is training with Paul, and that is the use of shields. So a shield is you wear a little belt and you press a little button, and it's basically an impenetrable force field that covers your entire body. And things can go through it, but just slowly. So if like someone shot you with a bullet, it would bounce right off. But if someone like took a knife and like slowly stabbed you, it would go through the shield. So that's sort of how they explain there's no gun. There's not really any guns. Yeah. They can all... This is another science fiction-y way to keep fantasy things like sword fighting being the primary method of warfare in a sci-fi book.
But it's sort of like, it also brings up a goofy problem you wouldn't have, which is like whenever people are sword fighting, whenever they're about to deliver the killing blow, like suddenly they have to be really slow
to get through the shield.
And I think it's really silly. Like when they're there's like a moment where Paul and Gurney are fighting, and like that happens, and it's just like the goofiest image in my head. I can't never. It always makes me giggle when like they're sword fighting, and the fact that it needs to be slow is brought up. It's cool when it's like when it's whatever that little murder drone thing.
Yes. So they get to the desert planet, and they're
believe it or not, we're finally here.
And they're like getting everything set up and everything, and in Paul's bed a little remote control killing device appears, and
it is remote controlled by we should go back in the bad guy plan. The house doctor is like their industry plant. They're man on the inside,
Dr. Yui.
And this is not important, but like doctors in this world can't be mind controlled or whatever. It is
kind of important because the doctor is like part of this super special school where like they can never betray anyone ever. They're like trained. They're like conditioned biologically to never be able to take a human life, through their actions. So like even if they betrayed someone,
Hippocratic oath.
Yep, they literally can't. Except this guy who can. And so the idea is that the Harkonnens, through a crazy like linguistic loophole, have broken the conditioning of the Atreides doctor because they like have his wife.
Oh, and he can't let his wife die.
Yes.
So he's gonna kill, or he's not. He's gonna deliver somebody to.
They have his wife, and and they say like, hey, if you don't do this stuff, we'll kill your wife. And so because of his conditioning, he has to do all the stuff they say. Which when we explain it seems like an extremely obvious loophole.
It does sound like a pretty obvious loophole. And also, the reason I said it's not really important is because when everybody knows something fishy's going on, they do bring up, they're like, well, it could be Dr. Yui, and then don't really talk about the fact that like he can't kill anybody, and they're just like, well, I guess we don't know. And so it's like,
well, they bring it up, they bring him up like he could be the traitor, and they're like, no, but he's conditioned, so he won't be. Like, they always bring him up to dismiss him.
Right, but it's like, I don't know, man. It's like 20,000 years in the future. Like, why are you so sure? And this also, if you've only seen the movie, this in the movie is a plot twist. Right? Am I right about that?
I don't remember.
I think I could be wrong about this, so I'm really sorry if you're listening and you're getting mad. But I remember, I could have also just been tired, but I remember Dr. Yui's reveal as the bad guy being a plot reveal, and in this book, it is not. It's dramatic irony that the man on the inside.
Immediately, his first thought is, "I'm going to betray them," and I feel bad about it.
Yeah, yes, he does feel very bad about it.
He brings it up constantly. So, a lot of stuff happens.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, we could probably honestly. I don't know how much we need to spend.
It's really just stuff happens so that you learn more about this world. Basically,
yeah, which we can talk about in a vacuum. We don't need to go over the. We don't need to talk about their plane ride.
Yeah. So basically, they're trying to get the House Atreides is trying to get set up on this planet, and through that process, we are exposed to lots of different things. One is the Imperial planetologist Kynes. He becomes an important character. He is the judge of the change, which he's supposed to be the neutral overseer of the change between the Harkonnens and the Atreides.
And he's what is it? There's something with him too, right? Where it's like he's the Imperial planetologist, he's the judge of the change, and Paul also clocks right away that he is intimately aware of Fremen culture.
Yes, so he's part of this half is he's sort of become half Fremen. He's become a leader in their society, and he keeps it on the DL.
Well, he has blue eyes, doesn't he?
Yes. And I think it's implied to a certain extent. Almost anyone who's been on the planet for any length of time starts to have blue eyes.
Oh, do they all have blue eyes? Does Paul?
I think the new people don't, but I think if they stayed long enough, they would. Yeah, I'm not sure. We also learn about the importance of water in this planet because it's literally all a desert. And so water, in addition to spice, is a main resource and source of power. And so it's used for all the things that sources of power are used for. Flaunting wealth. There's these palm trees in the palace that require the water a day of 10 people.
Oh yeah. I like that part. There's a part where they talk about the palm trees and how it's there's 60 people watching or whatever, and there's 6 palm trees, and then I think it's Gurney is hey, isn't that fucked up? If we got rid of those trees, we could feed all those people.
Yeah. And then someone says oh, but they also see it as a source of hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
Or do they really? Or are you just projecting? Or you
just saying them?
Yeah. Because right away we get a lot of... let's just talk about themes for a minute. Because there's a lot of the white people came to the desert and are stealing the oil water from the all the natural resources from the people who live there, and are making the country planet a much worse place for it, and
benefiting from it.
Yes. Yep. A lot of imperialism and colonialism going on, where the book gets I think people who read it and come away thinking that it's a novel about a white savior think you're supposed to like the Atreides family, and I'm not. You're not. I don't think.
That's a simplistic way of looking about it. I think
it's just a complaint. It's a complaint that I think it is fairly leveled against the first movie, the movie that's out, because there is no second part, and in that movie he is a white that is what that movie is, because there is no in the realm of the film there is no context for it not being that, but the book does provide, because we have a narrator the whole time,
and Paul being in the movie from 10,000 feet, yes, he's the main hero, but in the process of reading it, it is more complicated, or at least feels that way.
Book definitely feels a lot more complicated than the complicated politically than the first half of part one of these two movies do. That's for sure.
About Paul and all these characters who are on this planet, and how the reader should feel about it. Not Paul, go get revenge.
No, it's especially not... in the second half of when Paul like unlocks his latent abilities turns into a pretty frightening creature right away. And it's surprising to me that people read this book and are like, Paul's a good guy. I'm like, I don't think so. I think Paul might be the worst guy in the whole book.
Well, we can talk about this when we talk about like the book as a whole, or like this section as a whole, but I think part of the issues that people have with the book is that, like, I think Frank Herbert's trying to have it be a commentary on like Chosen One.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Stuff, but it doesn't come through quite so clearly in this first one because it's set up. And I've heard, even though I read the second one, didn't understand it, that the second one is really all those themes and ideas really coming to fruition. So like Dune, the first book, is sort of the setup for the ideas he actually wants to explore, which is interesting and something worth considering when people be like, oh, this is just a good science fiction. It's not Star Wars in the fact that Luke is the chosen one and is good and beats everyone.
You're not supposed to think about like when the Death Star blows up, like 300,000 people with office jobs also died, you know? Like in Dune, you are supposed to be thinking about that stuff pretty constantly. That's sort of the I would say the difference. It's not like this book is not a fun adventure book. I think it's like a fair criticism to be like, it doesn't get across its point about it being a commentary about a chosen one clear and quick enough. And does keep getting like lost in because this book has a lot in common with like schlocky science fiction
especially
novels
in this first
of the
half.
time.
Like it is just this first half is very much a straightforward science fiction, fantasy, high political tech thriller almost.
Yeah. There's like a mystery and like it really feels like, I alluded to this earlier, but like the second half, or not even the final quarter of the first half of this book feels like an entirely different novel than what is originally being set up. And like, that's cool, but I kind of wish it was just that other book the whole time, and I didn't have to like have all this other stuff at the beginning.
So let's go through the rest of the stuff that's at the beginning. So we learn more about spice and how it's harvested with crazy cool science fiction tech stuff. So there's the ornithopters, or thopters for short, which are basically like helicopters. And there are carryalls whose job is to take these huge spice harvesting facilities and pick them up and drop them off in the desert. And the reason they need to be able to pick them up and drop them off is because of the sandworms.
Yeah,
and it's crazy because that's a big selling point of the novel, and we are dozens of minutes into this podcast. This is the first time we are mentioning sandworms.
Yeah, they're not really like as big a part of this book as somebody suggesting Dune would have you think they are.
Especially in the first half. And I think that's reflected in this first half is almost entirely from the point of view of the off-world characters, and the more they get incorporated into the actual planet, like the fabric of the planet, they become more in tune and aware of the stuff of the actual planet. Because like the whole, I guess, in addition to like the intrigue, betrayal, houses fighting against each other plot, there's like the point of view that they are strangers on this planet and can't quite adjust, or have a hard time adjusting to like what it means, like the cultural value of water and how they talk to each other, how the people who live on this planet talk to each other about it, and how they see the sandworms, where like from the characters who are trying to from the people who are trying to extract the value from the planet, the worms are just like a source of threat that need to be avoided and mitigated, and are just something to be scared of. Same with the Fremen. Like, they're just a natural force out there in the desert, and we gotta deal with them so we can extract all this wealth from this planet. But that changes as the book continues. But the assassination thriller plot comes to fruition on one night. Dr. Yui brings down the shields. The Harkonnen and the Sardaukar, disguised as Harkonnen soldiers, come down on the planet. Duke Leto is paralyzed and captured by Yui. Paul and Jessica are kidnapped and are going to go get killed in the desert. But Dr. Yui still wants to exact his revenge against the Harkonnens for forcing him to do all this because he's not happy about it. So he puts a fake tooth into Duke Leto's mouth that is filled with poison gas. And so the idea is when Baron Harkonnen is gloating over his capture of Leto, Leto will bite the tooth and release the poison gas and kill the Harkonnens. And in exchange for that, Yui will help Paul and Jessica escape into the desert.
What a nice guy.
Yeah. Do you have anything to say about that?
No, but you know what we didn't say anything about?
What?
Duncan Idaho.
Oh, there's Duncan Idaho.
He's in the book.
That's right. He's another warrior guy, and his role...
He's not really in it.
His role was to create a pact with the House Atreides and the Fremen, which he sort of does, and then he helps Paul and Jessica escape, and then he dies.
Yeah, he is part. I just bring him up because he's really not important right now, except for
he's so cool.
Yeah, I guess, but his name is Duncan Idaho.
Well, he is my prime example of you take any male first name and any United States state and you mash them together and you get a cool name.
Johnny Utah?
Yeah.
That's pretty sweet, actually.
I'm telling you.
Ricky Montana?
It works. I tell you it works.
All right. And he does Yui. How does he know where Jessica and Paul are so that he can save them? Did Yui tell him? How's that work?
So Jessica and Paul get sleeping pills that Yui gives them, and so he gave them a strong one to knock them out.
Yeah.
And I think it's mentioned, like, Yui says, like, oh, hey, bad guys, you're going to go kill them in the desert. Use this ornithopter. And Yui has sort of, like, made it easier to escape from. He's put, like, a survival pack in there and loosened one of the seatbelts.
Duncan Idaho finds them. And does he just did he just do that by accident, or was that also not part of the plan? Like Yui told him he was going to betray them, but
I think Duncan Idaho
did he just like stumble across them?
Yui helped Duncan escape from the Harkonnens.
Oh, so he helped him,
and so
too.
I think he helped him, yeah. And so there's this big betrayal. The Harkonnens exterminate all the Atreides. They capture Thufir Hawat. But Paul and Jessica escape into the desert, and Paul has a mental break.
He sure does.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So in a moment where somebody might like go into shock.
Yeah, his father died. He's been kicked. He's trying to survive. He's fighting for his life.
Paul realizes like he can see the future, and not in like a way, not in like a vague way, in like a, oh, there are two ways my life is going to turn out way. And like a lot of the things leading up to that are vague. Like he can't say like what his mom is going to say next or anything like that. He just knows he's got two options, pretty much. And he sort of instantly turns from this like kind of annoying, bratty 15-year-old doofus into this cold, like prophet.
Conniving, yeah.
Yeah. This like a cold, conniving prophet. And it's importantly not because his mom asks him, she's like, hey, level with me, buddy. Are you the Kwisatz Haderach? And he's like, I am something far worse than that. like, oh my God.
Yeah, he like immediately becomes the chosen one. And like immediately has a plan of like what he's going to do and how he's going to do it and what's going to happen.
To use the parlance of our favorite author, he snaps.
No,
he does snap.
And it's a confluence of he's exposed to this spice, which it's implied that sort of helps with this prescient power.
Is that real? I must have missed that. That's cool.
Yeah, that's implied. That becomes a bigger thing later on. That
Sure.
may be a slight spoiler, but
Well, that's all right.
plus all this Bene Gesserit training, and it was mentioned earlier that like he was being trained as a mentat too. Do you remember that?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I do
So
remember
he's
that.
had all this high level training from like his father's men, sort of. Like his mom arranged it because she thought he's like this chosen one for the Bene Gesserit. Plus, he has this training because he's like gonna be a duke in this empire one day. Plus, he had this super traumatic event on this planet with this chemical that maybe sort of helps you see some of the future. And so it's sort of implied that all these things have come to fruition to like create this insane teenage boy.
Yeah, yeah. And this for me is where I was like, all right, now I really like this, because I thought there's a moment where Paul also finds out that does he divine this from the future? Is that how it works? Is that Baron Harkonnen is Jessica's dad?
Yes. He just
suddenly
figures it out.
Yeah, so that means that, you know, Paul is the grandson of the evil Baron.
Yeah, and also Jessica is pregnant, and she's like not showing,
Yeah.
and she barely knows it, and he knows immediately.
And so there's this moment where Paul's like, okay, there's two things that can happen. I can either go confront my evil granddad,
An exact revenge for my father's death.
Yep. Or, and this is like a quote, this is sort of verbatim, but the big word in here is from the book, start a galaxy-wide jihad. Like a religious revolution.
Yep.
And like, hey, guy like me, cut your losses and leave, start your life over. There's a third option there, but I'm not, I don't have that dog in me like Paul does, so... But he and
he has an immediate plan for becoming emperor.
He sure does.
And he's like, hey, the emperor helped overthrow this house. If I get out of this and can prove it, I can blackmail him into making me emperor. And so that's his plan.
And he right away, I mean, like, folks, there's suddenly a prophet in the desert. Mm-hmm. The stage is being set for a big scam.
Born from the desert.
Yes, literally born from the desert. So the stage is being set for a huge scam, something really bad to happen. Which is not in this section, but is like so off, like the terrible foreshadowing of Paul being like, I'm sure this will all be fine. No, it's not going to be fine. I think this stuff is really good because, like, this book is nothing really happens and then suddenly a lot happens. And hey, I know we spent 3 books saying how that's a bad thing. And that is a bad thing. But this is all set up and paid off in a way that is like makes thematic and relevant sense to the story and the plot and plight of our characters. It's not just like suddenly a book is over and we need to wrap all the stuff up in 20 pages. That's not what's going on.
This first half is like space thriller, but then because of what happens there, our main character sort of transforms into this sort of horrible bringer of justice or something. Like you're sort of like
holy justice,
Jesus Christ, which is very different, which I think is the reaction you're supposed to have, which is very different from like, yeah, go Paul.
yeah I can't imagine reading this book and having that feeling about it. There were like weird moments here that were really effective for me too, where like Paul and his mother still find moments to like laugh with each other. Mm-hmm. And it just makes it all the more haunting that it's like, oh my God. And he is just a little boy. But
they're surviving in the desert. And like, in a way you did not see them behaving with each other before, because it was like these high stakes. They're like royalty basically on this strange planet, fearing assassination and betrayal from every corner. But now that they're like surviving in the desert, like they have a bit of a stronger relationship.
Yeah, they've lost everything and now have nothing to lose by like being, mother and son and just having a normal relationship. It's really sweet, but it is also haunting because, like, what's come. I mean, come on.
And every once in a while, like, Paul does or says something, and Jessica's like, oh, like, freaks out. She's like, Jesus Christ, what have we created?
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. It's pretty sweet.
And that's sort of where we left them. They're surviving in the desert, trying to get... I think to the Fremen. That's basically their plan.
Well, they do kind of make it there. They catch up to Kynes and Duncan, Idaho.
Yep.
And then that secret base gets attacked. And we don't know what happens to Dr. Kynes. And I guess we don't know what happens to Duncan, Idaho either. But it is implied that at least Duncan, Idaho is definitely dead for sure.
Yep. But Paul and Jessica escape into a sandstorm. And as they fly into the storm, we have... the Bene Gesserit litany against fear, which is the classic part of this book. We'll drop the full quote in the description, but it's like a prayer basically, where they say fear is the mind killer and how you let the fear pass through you. It's awesome.
It is awesome. I did like that part a lot. Also, when did we already say this? When Duke Leto fails in his attempt to kill the Baron and ends up just killing the weird creep Piter de Vries. And through that sort of throws a wrench into the Baron's plans, and all we know is that the Baron puts professional wrestler Dave Bautista in charge of Dune, and then has it set up so that
in-world name is Beast Raban.
No, I don't think so. And then just as pretty much the fall guy for when his super cool nephew Fade Routha gets to take over and be cool and in charge. And also there's like a weird incestual pedophilic relationship maybe between the two of them.
If it wasn't obvious that the Baron Harkonnen was evil from trying to murder the good guys, Frank Herbert makes him incredibly fat, so he's even doubly evil. And then on top of that, he makes him a gay pedophile.
Yes.
Because at the end of the chapter, she's like, bring me one of the boys to my spa.
Yeah, it's not great.
Is, problematic.
That's what I mean when it's like, feels like, because there's like moments where it feels like a white man wrote this in 1965, where it's like stuff like that, and then the people are constantly being like, wow, Leto is really brave and like really kind, and then he's like constantly rude to his wife. And you're like, what the hell? And even like there's like this weird plan where nobody trusts the lady Jessica, and so the Duke is like, oh, I'll be cold and rude to her so that I also, they don't like think we're colluding or whatever. But he doesn't really like treat her any differently than he was treating her before, and like we as the reader,
so he's just like, why is my husband mean to me?
It's a weird. It's
for
part.
Your own good, Jessica.
Yeah, you wouldn't understand.
Well, and then we can bring up the Dr. Yui is heavily coded as Asian. And he's the sneaky betrayer.
Yeah, yes. There's a lot of, which is so weird because it also then like handles a lot of like Middle Eastern, Arabic and Islam as a religion, especially with like, it feels like very deft fingers. Like there's not, when we meet the Fremen, they're not like horrible racist stereotypes, because like that's the point of the book, is to be like, hey, people can look different and be just like everybody else. But then it's like, okay, but we still have like, there's still problems with like the way Dr. Yui is written, and like the way that like Duke treats his wife. I don't know.
And then you could also talk about like the meta narrative of like, what does it mean for a white man in the 60s to like co-opt parts of like Arabic and Islamic culture for his sci-fi book to like make a point about chosen ones or something. But I think that sort of comes more to fruition later in the book.
And it's not, and there's not a, I don't think it's, because you might start reading the book and you're like, why is his name Paul? Paul. But then you think about like the Bible, and you're like, his name is John. Like that's why, is because it's showing you like the European influence. It's showing you, the reader, like the European influence on an Eastern culture, on a Eastern from the West perspective culture, which is effective, I think. And as far as I know, people generally think that's good. And I haven't read the second half of this book, so I'd be surprised if it really dropped the ball. And
it's not using it just for the aesthetic. Like it's making a point. No. Like it's very much like the spice is oil. And we didn't bring this up too. Part of what Kynes and the Fremen are trying to do is like turn Arrakis into a paradise. You know,
they're
like
trying to make
he's
it
a planetologist / ecologist, so they're like trying to make it a good place for humans to live, so they don't have to constantly be, so cutthroat about the water and everything.
But then when you meet them, they have their own culture. Like it's fine. You don't need to fucking gentrify Arrakis. It's they like it there. That's where they live, which is all good. I think. I don't think there's anything with that that's like. No, I was stunned that nothing with the Fremen stuck out to me as like really horrible,
horribly racist.
Yeah, I was very surprised about that. Unless please, if you're listening to this, unless I totally missed something, I'm pretty sure it's all dealt with pretty deftly. And you made a good point. Like, none of this is just random. He didn't these like vowel consonant combinations found in like Islamic cultures sound cool. I'm just going to put them in my sci-fi book. Like, no, they're there for a reason. This is a book about like the most famous story of all time in our world from, the most famous religious text of all time takes place in, the real life equivalent of this fantasy science fiction. Like what the analogy is trying to be, so it makes sense. It is fun. So this, I'm gonna if you could say something now. I'm about to change the subject and talk about something else. If you had anything else to say about what we were talking about,
I think we're right on track. Just talking about the section as a whole.
There are vestigial parts of this book that I think just come with like Frank Herbert enjoyed reading, science fiction novels he found for a dime in his local bookstore. There are moments where it's like I made this joke to you already, Danilo, but it's like people have conversations sometimes in this book where it's like, oh, the Constitution? Oh, you mean that thing that's from the Revolutionary War, right? The Revolutionary War? Oh, that was when they declared independence from England. Like, that's how people talk in this book sometimes.
I was going to note, I noticed this more in the beginning. I think it got a lot better and more readable. But, like, especially, like, the first chapter with the Harkonnens, like, we're the bad guys, and this is our plan, right? Yes, that's our plan. And then it's like, then he thought how he would actually betray this plan later on,
Yeah, it's like
it's
we don't
very
need all this.
Schlock, like,
yeah, it's silly and like it almost feels like it's there to then be like, oh, it's actually an entirely different book, but it's still in the book. It's still in the book, You still have to read that part to get to the other part.
And I can't think of any examples, but even while I was reading, there were, like, words and things they referred to that, like, I think was supposed to make it more immersive. Like, there's this world with other things or ideas you don't understand. But it's like, it's never relevant. You're like, huh? And that's the only time they mention it. It doesn't come back. Well, there's...
Sorry, no, go ahead.
I said there's, like... But a lot of the things, like, are useful and you need to know. Like, shields or... We haven't talked about this, but laser guns, which are lasers that can cut through anything except shields. If they connect with a shield, there's an atomic explosion. And so
it's pretty fucked up.
I think that science fiction-y part is super cool. The way he like makes something and then makes something else that balances it. It's sort of more basic science fiction, but
it's cool.
Almost like how pointed it is. Like, here's a shield that nothing can cut through, and here's a laser that nothing can stop, and when they meet, there's a big explosion, and sort of the characters and the military strategy have to like contend with that.
There's two like of what you were just talking about. They both, one more than the other. I don't know if this becomes important later, but like C.H.O.A.M, like I don't give a fuck. Like
this, so the C.H.O.A.M company. This is for me one of my favorite parts of this book.
Oh, okay.
It's sort of like the unseen backbone of all this conflict. So the C.H.O.A.M company is a company that has a monopoly on space travel, specifically faster than light space travel.
Well, I thought that was the guild.
The Spacing Guild and the C.H.O.A.M company are the same thing.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought they were different. I thought the C.H.O.A.M company controlled like the economic interest of the empire.
Oh, I'm totally wrong. So yeah, the Spacing Guild is the transport, and C.H.O.A.M is like the economic, the shipping company that uses the Spacing Guild. I think that's why I got confused.
Well, you're not stupid, because they're like, okay, so they pay a lot of money to the Spacing Guild to then bring all the armies down, but like I thought that all the money had to go through this other organization, and it just brings up a lot of like, I don't care about the fucking C.H.O.A.M company, like unless it becomes vitally important. I don't think it needs to be in this prophecy book.
Is in charge of the spice and selling the spice, but the Spacing Guild is in charge of transport, and so C.H.O.A.M can't do anything unless it pays the Spacing Guild a ton of money to move stuff.
That makes sense. There's a moment with the Spacing Guild where it's what I was saying before, where I just remembered this, where Paul has been alive for 15 years and is still like, hey, how come nobody's ever seen them before? And it's like, why are you talking like this right now? You should know the answers to these questions. They're like mysterious or whatever.
And the idea is that spice is valuable because the C.H.O.A.M company sells it and makes a profit, and then the emperor has like stakes in the C.H.O.A.M company and they see part of that profit. Like, it's very space capitalism.
Yeah. Space empire. You know.
Yep.
We all know.
And because the Spacing Guild has a monopoly on space travel, they can basically charge whatever they want to move armies. So they're like a neutral force of like, hey, if the Harkonnens want to exterminate all their Atreides, yeah, we'll move your guys, but it's going to cost you $1 trillion.
Because they're the only ones who can have... Is the guild robots? Are they like the only robots who are still around?
We don't know what or who the guild is.
I thought there was a moment where Baron Harkonnen says something about them that gives more information about them away, but I can't remember.
I think it's implied that they are somehow not human anymore, or perhaps mutated.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I do like that. But it's very funny, you know, it's like all of the questions where you're like, hey, how come there's no guns or spaceships, or isn't this a science fiction novel? They're all sort of hand waved away because it's really a fantasy novel about a chosen one hero.
Yes, I was going to say, like, I noticed so much more, like, there's dukes, priestesses, swords, shields, fiefs, an emperor, great houses.
Yeah, it's all here.
There's
all
a
the pieces are
Bible.
here.
Like, it's all like it all takes place on one planet. Like, they don't even go to different planets, really.
Yeah, I know. It's not. It can just be, you just substitute the planets for like continents on the same planet, and it's a and then the fucking Spacing Guild for like a boat, I don't know, company. It's the same. There's no reason for this, and I'm not saying like genre fiction needs to justify its genre, but I mean, there's no reason that like it takes place 90,000 years in the future.
It is more fantasy-y than I think people who see, oh, this is science fiction, think it is. Because like the backbone of this book is this like spiritual religious war coming out of this old feudal system. Like, yeah, but it's in space, kind of.
Yeah, kind of. Some of it's in space.
So you mentioned when we started that you thought the first half was boring and the second half was awesome. Is there anything you wanted to say more about that part of it?
Just that I think once Paul achieves like characterhood, the book becomes a lot more interesting because like there are glimpses of it where Paul like when Paul meets Dr. Kynes, Like, he fulfills, like, a bunch of boxes that the Chosen One will meet at, like, one time. And then there's, like, a couple other moments where that happens. But once he's really, like, telling the future and doing all this stuff, I think the book really, really picks up for me. We are two men.
Correct.
But women, like, are obviously an incredibly important part of this story. Mm-hmm. The whole, the Bene Gesserit are a huge fucking part of Dune and a huge part of this story in particular. Do you think that it is a commentary? It's part of his commentary about the Chosen One being like a white man, or do you think it's like
because it's a 60s sci-fi book?
Yeah,
I don't know, because I think I tried to reread this book like in early college, like right after I learned what feminism actually was. I was like really put off by it. Yeah. In a way that, college students are hypersensitive to that sort of thing.
Sure.
Which is not to say that I think that isn't in here. Like, Jessica is not married to Duke Leto. She has the role of concubine because it is politically advantageous for Leto to remain unmarried, even though she can still produce an heir or whatever. She's the only female character in the book, really. There's like a servant for like 2 seconds, right, who she dies.
I forgot about her.
But I think it becomes more... We probably have a more pointed discussion about gender in the second half of the book when there are 2 more women in it.
Oh, that's right. I think I know who they both are.
Yeah, Paul has a love interest later on.
And, there's the woman writing all of the epigraphs.
Sorry, then I mean 3 women. There's Yes, and part of it, like, it can't not also be aware that, this is a very Western European medieval political system, and the whole point of Paul's character is to have a religious holy war that dismantles it. I'm sure it's aware of all that. It'll just be interesting to see how it's, treated later on. As someone who doesn't remember.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I like to think that it's supposed to be a commentary. Yeah. But, that he does... It's interesting to me that this book is... Like, this was the other thing I was thinking about that we can talk about. I think it's the dedication is literally like, I'm going to quote this. This is the dedication at the beginning of the book. To the people whose labors go beyond ideas into the realm of real materials, to the dry land ecologists, wherever they may be and whatever time they work, this effort at prediction is dedicated in humility and admiration. Now that sounds like the book is really, really just going to be about ecology and like climate change. Mm-hmm. It is like not. It is not. Like, it is, but it is a lot more obsessed with... At least right away, ignoring the space thrillery stuff at the beginning. Like, when the themes start to come through, more about prophecy and religion than it is about, like...
Deserts are bad.
Science. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how that comes through, because I know it becomes more part of it, and part of the deal that Paul makes is, like, if I'm the Emperor, I can help you make Dune a paradise, Right. And so that's how he sort of gets through to them.
Oh, yeah, that's what he says to Dr. Kynes,
Dr. Kynes, yeah.
But, they probably don't want that.
And I think that complicates things later, because if Dune is a paradise, will there be more spice? Will there be more value to extract out of the desert? Who knows?
But then is that saying, like, does a country only have, like, worth because it's... like shitty to be there?
Or because it can be exploited for its like, is the desert bad for humans to live in, so it should all be green? Like, it's a like, I don't know.
Yeah,
it's a strange point to make.
It is.
Like, no one in our planet now is trying to make all the deserts into forests. Like, the dedication makes it seem like Frank Herbert thinks that's what needs to happen with the world.
Yeah, or like to avoid. Yeah, that's so funny.
And is this pre-climate change? Because this also could be like, no, our problem isn't that there's a lot of deserts. Our problem is that the world's getting hotter, which I guess will make things more of a desert. Or like also potentially like, I think he's American. Did he grow up like during the Dust Bowl and like,
Right. So, I mean, no way, that's his name? Guy Callender? In 1938, a man named Guy Callender connected carbon dioxide increases in the Earth's atmosphere to global warming.
Oh, crazy.
And even before that, in the late 1800s, there was a paper about that. So he had to be aware about this, but it does seem like that is not, I don't know, I don't buy that that's the solution. That Paul's like, oh, we'll just make this place a bit different. It's like, no, this place, it's not as if, is this like lore? Did Dune used to not look like this?
I don't know.
Because if it's always just been like this, like there's a difference between terraforming like Mars, the idea of, making oxygen breathable on Mars and turning it all into like lush forests and vegetation.
So I wonder if the dedication is throwing us off. Weirdly.
Maybe.
I'm reading the theme page of Dune on Spark Notes.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And I think it says human control over ecology is a theme. And just one of the themes raises questions about whether humans should exercise control over the ecology of their environment. So I wonder if it just...
That could go either way.
I know.
Uh-oh. Oh, no.
I don't know what the book thinks about it. So I think that will come to fruition later.
It just is interesting to me that this book has always been pitched to me by fans of it as being like ecological science fiction, and none of that really comes through in the first half of this entire book.
No, and I doubt
it's
it'll
there
come
a little,
through.
but it's not there a lot.
It's probably a more of like this is a 5-book series of insane space opera novels, and this is the first one. And I think a lot of people just read the first one, and I feel more or less a contained chosen one narrative. And then I think the more bigger themes of like humanity's role in planets in the universe, I think happen later. And I think that must be part of it. Like, I can't imagine that the second part of this movie is going to have as much ecology as the second half of this book does. Because, like, you're gonna make a big budget action movie about, like, should we make this desert into a forest?
Yeah. I don't know. When Timothée Chalamet's sitting with his assistant director and assistant screenwriter, I don't know if that's the decisions they're making.
Maybe they will have a huge. I mean, climate change is a hot topic. Maybe they like have that be a sub theme or something.
No pun intended.
It's a hot topic. It is only recently an important topic. I'd like to emphasize this. It has not been a threat up until this point.
No, just suddenly now we're all scared of it. Isn't that weird? I mean, that's I don't know. Reading this, it's also hard to read it. Sorry if you're listening to this and you're a fucking crazy person and you don't think climate change is real, but it is. And it's hard to it's interesting thinking about this book when it was written as to like now when we are staring down the barrel of the gun that is the
might be fighting over water.
Right, yeah. It does change it makes me like, it made me want to like keep looking for those bits a lot more than they are in the book, and I kind of keep catching myself from being like, okay, this is not what this section is about. I have to stop trying to make this section be about that. And I think once I let go of that, and like I said about, Paul achieving his scary prophecy brain, it started to really click with me. Not that I wasn't enjoying it before, I just started enjoying it a lot more after.
Nice.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen?
I think Jessica's going to have this kid. Oh, I know there's a time skip.
Okay.
I know that. And so, child born.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that... So the two things I know about Dune as a story is that there's a time skip in this first one, and that Paul is not the main character of the whole book series. So I think Paul is gonna... meet the big evil bad guy, both of them, the Emperor and the Baron.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's gonna fall in love.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't think that it's going to end well, but I do think he'll fall in
I was
love.
gonna say anything, and no one's gonna die. You think it's just gonna be? They're gonna talk it out.
Oh, I think Lady Jessica will die. Because she's she is the main woman character of this novel, and so to further the character development of the male main character, she must die, as it was written in the scrolls.
Well, we shall see if all that comes to fruition on the next episode of Hardcover Hooligans. Catch you later.
Yeah, see you later, Dune-ites, Dunophiles,
Dunologists.